So set 13 is now live on the servers, and this is a bit of an anomaly, no pun intended, when it comes to our meta analysis. Normally, we post these on the Saturday following the patch dropping, but we've had a bit of a hiccup on being able to do so this time around, more specifically because we had a bunch of mini patches. There was a B patch that got deployed on the 21st of November. Then on the 25th of November, there was a C patch, and in between, there were a couple of bug fixes and like anomaly fixes and all of these bug exploits that needed to get patched ASAP because people were abusing them on ladder. Honestly, shout out to the team for being able to get everything, you know, fixed, solved, so that we don't have to deal with these exploit abusers anymore, which is great. It's a bit bumpy in the road, but I would rather have them just immediately address these concerns than have it play out for like the next 2 weeks and TFT is unplayable, especially for first patch, because this patch, or rather the set, is pretty freaking dope. But now let's go over again. If you're new to these meta analyses, welcome. But we don't go over just the compositions. We actually go over some other things too, like some notable items that you should be building and making sure that you have them in your compositions, maybe some unit quality stuff. And the first thing we're going to talk about before the compositions is itemization. Now, itemization feels very, very flexible, to be completely honest with you. I think you can get away slamming quote-unquote suboptimal items on a lot of units right now. So, quite honestly, I don't know if that's just because items just have a little, they feel like they have a little less of an impact in terms of like how important it is to get X item onto your carry or Y item onto your tank. But overall, it feels pretty flexible. Like, for example, if you're playing Heimerdinger, you shouldn't greed for the blue buff. Most of the time, if you can slam a Shojin and preserve a lot of HP, that's actually the correct play. So that feels actually really, really good. So you'll see a lot of people slamming Shojin nowadays. That's actually one of the most top played items in like the entirety of the set. Like 4.17 on average that you see per game. That's a lot of fucking Shojins. So a lot of people are building Shojins. That's why you see it a lot. I think a lot of Ginsu's being made as well. That's just because Twitch, particularly in the meta, is really good, but also kog'maw is also really great as well, both of which are strong Ginsu holders, which we'll touch upon a little bit later. Another notable thing to note as well is Sunfire Cape. This item, for historically speaking, for a very long time, basically for as much as I can remember, this item has more or less been pretty freaking bad. It's been an item that you don't want to try to use too often, but you slam it if you need it early game tempo, and that's about it. Nowadays, we're starting to see a lot of players really like Sunfire Cape in general, and it seems to be one of those items that's really good in the early game, and even throughout the late game, it still holds itself up. So if you're like, oh man, I have a Sunfire Cape, no, that is a good thing. You should be slamming that thing almost every single time. And actually, I think nowadays, it's sort of the preferred anti-heal item over red buff, over Morello. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be slamming either of those items, but just keep in mind that Sunfire is typically the best way to go, which is pretty interesting. But those were a little bit of the things that you should know. And oh, sorry, one last thing, Warmog's armor. Warmog's is a very, very strong item. It's just a big stat stick, but also in particular, one of the strongest tanks right now is actually Garen. So in terms of unit quality right here, I just have all the units that just popped up on like tactics.tools, but Garen is, I think, arguably the best tank in the current meta right now. He's a bit overplayed in my opinion, but he's still one of the best tanks that you can have for your front line, and Warmog is one of his best items because of his emissary trait, where he shares a percentage of his max HP to his adjacent allies to the left and right of him. So honestly, that's why you see a lot of Warmogs, that's why you see a lot of Garens. But if you're playing into lines that need Garen for the front line, and there's going to be a lot, just keep in mind that it's very likely going to be contested, and it's probably one of the most contested forecasts in the current patch. But enough about that, enough about the meta. Let's go and talk about the compositions. And first off, let's start with our 1-cost rerolls, and that is none other than Violet 4. Violet 4 is a pretty interesting take on the way that you can approach reroll in general with the new mechanic. For those of you who are uninitiated or unaware, which is crazy, that means you probably just not touched the patch period. This was the most popular comp before the C patch. Basically, what players would do is that they would roll on 6, or sorry, they would roll on 5, try and find the Draven 3, the Darius 3, maybe the Vanguard 3 as well, but they're looking for Violet 3. And actually, most of the time, you actually skip Powder because it's too many things to hold. You really need to prioritize that Violet 3. And the reason why this was so good is because, one, if you hit that Violet 3 early, let's say on like stage 31, you are super strong. Nobody can beat your board. This Violet unit is just too strong during stage 3. Stage 4, you might start losing a couple fights, but stage 3, more often than not, you found yourself pretty stable. And then, even if it wasn't a 3-star by 3-1, even if you had a 2-star Violet, it's still one of the best 2-star 1-cost units. Excuse me. But really strong unit. It preserves you so much HP anyways, so you preserve a decent amount of HP, and then the anomaly round would hit. And for those of you who are unaware, there are 60-ish anomalies. I don't know the exact number, but there's 60-ish. So my rule of thumb is if I have 65 gold, I could hard force an anomaly whenever I wanted to. And the thing about Violet reroll is that you would hard force Ultimate Hero, which turns a 3-star 1 cost into a 4-star 1 cost. And that's why you see some people having nothing but 4-star Violets in their match history instead of 3-star. So that's kind of how it went down. So people would just force Ultimate Hero every single time, and this Violet 4 unit was just absolutely unbeatable. You just play into 6 Pit Fighter, and then once you got to 6 with the Violet 4, you were looking at a pretty comfortable game. It just had to do a little bit. You just had to make sure that you're positioning correctly, so you weren't getting like auto CC'd or stuff like that. But generically speaking, once you got to 6 Pit Fighter with the Violet 4, you're basically unstoppable. Typically, you're positioning her on the far right or the far left here. You might notice itemization wise, Titans is a very crucial item for her in my opinion. I think it's one of her best, if not the best item. It's a bit slept under the rug with her, because I think a lot of people think about BT, thinking about Sterax, and these are great items, and historically they were better than Titans, but Violet really enjoys the tank stats. So I do think Titans is really great to have on Violet, and it just works so synergistically with not only her as a unit, but her with her trait with Pit Fighter. So that is why you see a lot of Violet 4 in a lot of people's match histories. This is to get patched in the C patch, but it still seems to be pretty solid, at least from what I can tell from people's match histories. Another thing to note as well, Draven 3 is a very crucial thing to have in the back. You don't need it, absolutely, but it's really good to have just because he can definitely clean up a lot of fights in case your Violet somehow dies a bit early. Darius 3 is also a nice bonus as well. This could be like your main tank, this could be a tertiary carry, totally fine as well. Vander is typically your main tank though. You do want to try to get that Vander 3 if it's possible. You shouldn't force it, but most of the time, you should be able to find a decent number of copies to the point where you should feel, okay, you know what? Maybe I can also go for the Vander 3, and you can have even a strong tank for this entire line. The other 1 cost meta reroll is Surprise. Oh my god, it's family again! Except it's a little different. This time it's on Ambusher and actually Powder 4. Again, Ultimate Hero. The only difference though is that it's Frontline Powder. It's Frontline Powder, which is a little odd. You would think, why the heck would I play Frontline Powder ever? Isn't she a backline carry? Well, she's intended to be. But the idea behind Powder in the frontline is that Powder can just get mana batteried, which is a term that we use to describe it. You know, units autoing it so many times, and whenever a unit gets autoed, it generates mana, right? Powder gets just basically mana batteried in the front line, and then just starts exploding, sending a bunch of these little mechanical monkeys, and they just blow up boards. It's a really interesting board to see. I don't think it's a board that was like too prevalent. Nowadays, I think people know already, especially after Sub-Zero Arc decided to post a video about it. I can just put it right here. The Secret Family reroll tech is stronger than Violet 4. I believe this is the game that he played. I think Raptor was in call with him when he played this. But I think this was a game that he had played with Raptor in call, because Raptor was like non-stop telling me like, dude, like you will not believe the game that Sub-Zero and I just played. We played Frontline Powder 4, or I guess in this one he did Frontline Powder 3, which is interesting. I didn't know that this was, I didn't actually watch the video of Sub-Zero, I'm sorry. But you can go for Frontline Powder 4. This is like one of the best ways to play it. I think you can also do Violet 4, which is what I think he does in this video particularly, but this was during the this was before the C patch. So I don't know what's actually better, but if I had to guess, Powder 4 is probably better. You do need other carries as well though. You need like a Camille, you need the Violet. Like it could be Violet 3, it's totally fine. You can have the Jinx as well, maybe the Smeech. The only problem that I have with this is that these are very highly contested units in this line. So your Violet 4 players, you have your Camille reroll players, which we'll go over later. Smeech players, which we'll go over later. Garen's in this line, which is like we talked about earlier, one of the most contested 4-cost tanks. Really contested units. So I would not lean this line almost ever, but if you have a very good spot for it, sure, you know what, why not? But just be careful. It's very easy to get contested in this line. If you do want to learn more about this line though, you can go over onto Reddit. I will link this as well in the description below. But someone made a very detailed guide on how to play Powder reroll. I don't know. I can't really speak on the person who played it because I don't actually know too much about their background. But this guide, at the very least, from what I can tell, seems very solid. So I would definitely recommend looking into this and trying to see like what is the philosophy behind it and how to actually play this composition, because I believe once you can get this online, it's a pretty cool comp. But moving on to our 2 costs now, let's go over to the first one, which is Nocturne and Akali. This is a you're not playing for first. Like, if you're playing this line, you are gifted by the hand of Mort a very, 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 very strong Nocturne Akali start. Like, you have perfect item slams from 2-1. You have a Nocturne 2 or an Akali 2 or 2-1. And you're like, you know what? If there was ever a time to play this line, it'd be now. If you play the 4 quick striker, 4 sentinel version, I think this is the better version of the line. I think there's like a different like vertical rebel version. I don't think that's very good, to be honest. This is probably the better line in my opinion. I think the traits just work out a lot nicer as well. And Beza also just is an option for like your tertiary carry, so it's very easy to get somebody else online. Also, you have Twisted Fate in the back, which if you could also get Twisted Fate 3, that's a lot of 3 stars. So this line is not even really terrible. You're definitely playing it from, you have to play it from the correct spot. You can't be hard forcing this line and expect to do well with it. But more often than not, this line I think is very, very good. But again, it's not really like a play for first line. It's more of like you're playing for like a 4th or a 3rd. Very cool line though. Nocturne just Ginsu, QSS, BT. We've seen this kind of build all the time on like previous carries. Like if you remember Warwick carry back in, I believe this was last set 12. Very similar itemization. Akali is just sort of like Hodge, JG, Hodge, Hodge, JG, 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 Hodge, whatever this is. Whatever those are, totally fine. AP items generically just work very well as well. You do want to make sure that you can itemize both of them though. You really do want to hit both of these carries if you really want to succeed on this line. But other than that, it's a very straightforward line. Not too much to talk about. Moving on, going over to Camille. Now, Camille and Smeech. This is the meta line. This is like probably the most meta line. We actually did a whole video talking about this line very early. This is actually during the A patch, which I was like, this comp is underplayed. I made a video about it. And then nowadays people are like, oh my God, this is like the best comp ever. Oh my God, it's like I called it or something. Holy shit. But anyways, talking about Camille and Smeech. If you want to learn more in depth about this line, you can go watch that video. I'll also link that below as well. But the TLDR is this. You roll on 6 trying to find the Camilles, and if you happen to find Smeeches, you find the Smeeches. You don't need to hit Smeech 3, but Smeech 3 is a super big spike. Unless you are so far away from Smeech 3 when you hit that Camille 3 that you don't think it's reasonable to go for it, then you know what? So be it. Don't go for the Smeech 3, just keep pushing level, totally okay. The big thing about this composition is that, one, it is a, what is the term I'm looking for? It has a huge, it has a lot of mass. Oh my God, what is the word I'm looking for? It's a critical mass comp. It's a critical mass comp. It's a term that a couple buddies of mine like sort of like coined, but like once you hit, critical mass. Once you hit critical mass with this composition, you just win. Like, there's a tipping point with this comp. And for this comp, it's 5 Ambusher. You really want to get to 5 Ambusher. So that's what the critical mass is. Camille also utilizes a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of very, very good ore items. So, Portable Forge is like your best friend in this line. If you get Portable Forge 2-1 and you think you have 80 items, and you're like, hey, maybe I can play Camille from the spot, take Portable Forge. She can use Collector. She can use, oh my God, she can use Collector. I don't even have it on here. She can use Collector. She can use Prowler's Claw. She can use Silvermere Dawn. She can use Spectral Cutlass. Spectral Cutlass is very frustrating, by the way. This is the first time in a long time I've seen this. This sucks to play against. It's like the worst feeling ever. And I hate it. I hate it. Oh my God, I got so mad. It was like set 7 Assassins all over again. I cannot believe when they were doing the Ornn items and they were like taking away some of them, they didn't take away this item. This item is so toxic by design. But regardless of how I feel about it, you can take these Ornn items and you can do very, very well. I think out of all of them, if I had to rank them, I think Silvermere comes first. I think Prowlers comes second. Collector comes third. Spectral comes fourth. But to be fair, those are still like miles and leagues ahead of anything else that you could throw on this unit. So still, really, really cool way to play the game. Again, Smeech is just like Hodge, BT, IE. Echo is like JG Hodge. He's more of a tertiary carry, not really a main carry. Again, 5 Ambusher is the big key. You do want to try to find an Ambusher emblem if you can. That's the easiest way to like spike to 5. Otherwise, you're going to have to be looking for that Jinx, and that can sometimes be very difficult to find. But hey, despite like, it might be hard to find, but Camille and Smeech are like really strong. Like, you're going to be stable for a very long time. I've also noticed we haven't been talking about anomalies too much, but this comp in particular, invisibility is a very, very strong anomaly for this line. They did nerf the anomaly, so instead of 4 seconds, you now have 6 seconds, but it's still very, very good for this line. And overall, just so we're clear, with a bunch of these lines, unless it's very specifically an anomaly that you really should keep your eyes out for, generically speaking, it's not too important. Just pick whatever fits on your board and makes a lot of sense. pretty straightforward. Moving on to the next one, Tristana reroll. This is going to be actually, I know there's 2 more tabs. This is actually the last 2-cost reroll comp we're going to talk about. And the reason I say that is because Tristana has a bunch of variations. And I mean a bunch. So this is a really, really cool, one of the few times that you can really see skill expression when it comes to playing a reroll comp. Excuse me. The reason I say that is this. Reroll comps feel very cookie cutter. It's, you go to 6, you roll for these lines, you roll for these units, you know what the board looks like, and that's it. A little bit of skill expression that comes from playing reroll is that you don't pivot your board into a weaker board just because you're trying to play this exact cookie cutter board. That has been like the only level of skill expression when it came to like reroll, and then maybe you roll a bit more aggressively on like a stage early or maybe a stage later because of whatever tempo. Like, there's like nuance to it, but it was not a lot compared to standard lines. But Tristana reroll is kind of interesting because there's so many variations and they're all viable that you have a lot of really interesting ways to express how to play this line. I would argue that as long as you're not getting contested on this line, you could maybe one-trick it. I would love to see if somebody could like one-trick Tristana to like challenger, but I'm not entirely sure if that's possible, just because, one, this line I think really, really needs collector. Without collector, I feel like this Tristana unit just feels like half the unit that she could be. So that is the only thing that kind of bothers me a little bit. But you don't necessarily need it to succeed. But again, this unit feels way better with collector. You do really need the Ginsu's as well. So Ginsu's collector and then +1. Usually it's IE. That way your spell can crit. She just throws a big cannonball at things. But this is a pretty fun line. The easiest version to play of this line is what you see on screen right now, which is the 6 Sentinel version. 6 Sentinel is like super dumb easy. You roll on 6, go for the Leona, the Rel, Tristana. Very straightforward. Ezreal 3, you could go for it, but I don't think this unit's that great. I think Ezreal 2 is a little undervalued by a lot of players, but I think Ezreal 3 is like mid, like it's whatever. Heimerdinger is nice as well because depending on the academy item, you can either put it on Leona or on Heimerdinger, and then this could act as like your secondary carry. Really cool line, really fun. But there's another version of this line which is for Emissary. For Emissary, also, same idea. It's like you play the Leona 3, Rel 3, the Trist 3, but now you're playing around for Emissary because that's just what you happen to find. Again, the Garen, you do really want it to be in between the Leona and the Rel because of the Emissary value, but this is still like a very solid way to play the board because this is more of a tempo board. Like you tempo with this to try to like outlast everybody else because you were so strong because you just pivoted into whatever you found. So you can play this variation of the board, again, very straightforward. But finally, and this is like the cook, 5 Academy Tristana 3 is really cool. I think this is something, I think Academy in general and Vertical Academy, I actually have a lot of it that I will be posting tomorrow, but Vertical Academy is like really, really fun, but it's not necessarily a great line. And the reason I say that is because this line, it's so fun to play because you get to itemize like all these like academy units, and it feels like you're playing like Exalted, right? With all these like different items that you get to use, but realistically speaking, most of the time it's not that necessary, right? There's a very, I'm not gonna spoil, you know what, I'm not gonna spoil the game, but all I'm gonna say is that there are some academy items that work very well with some augments, so you could definitely utilize that to your advantage and maybe play into an academy line. I would argue, again, academy is probably like a C tier line, but with the right augments and the right conditions, with the right items, you could definitely make that line win a lot of lobbies. But no spoilers here, but that is Tristana reroll. Again, very cool line, a lot of different ways and variations to approach it. So I'd highly recommend taking a look into it and being a bit more open-minded to potentially playing into it, especially if you get a collector out of your forge and you're trying to like lean Camille, but then you notice somebody else is playing Camille and you're like, oh my god, now what? And then Tristana. That's actually what happened in my my personal Tristana game. Different game, but very cool. Moving on. 3-cost reroll. The only one that is notable at all seems to be kog'maw. This is a very, very straightforward line as well. I think kog'maw also, by the way, really likes portable forge. I wouldn't say it's amazing compared to the other things that you can get for this line, but it's still very, very good. The reason I say that is because kog'maw loves ooh, these items are not looking too hot. Sorry, let me fix that real quick. But typically when it comes to kog'maw, you're looking at like Ginsu's. I want to say it's like Gunblade Shiv. Really, I don't think, I mean, Archangels is probably fine, but it's Ginsu Shiv Gunblade is probably like the main build that you're looking for. Scar 3 is kind of like your main tank as well. Very straightforward. There's a very specific anomaly for this line that you should keep in mind. I believe it's called like, you know what, I should find the, I have tactical tools open on my right side. I'll look it up for you right now. But I believe it's like called like rooted, or like, it's the one where like your frontline unit cannot move and like it pulls the other units closer to it. Let me see if I can find it for you. Sorry, I found it. Deep Roots. Gain 700 HP, 25 armor, and MR. The unit cannot move or be stunned and pull their target into range. The reason why this is so good in this line in particular is because of Firelight. Firelight in this line kind of causes Scar to, like, every once in a while, he kind of like jumps backwards. I don't know what causes that interaction, but sometimes he'll come backwards and then you lose sniper value and your combat suddenly can't clean and everything becomes very claustrophobic and you're like, oh my god, now what? And then you just kind of die and you lose the fight. So Deep Roots is really nice on Scar because it keeps him rooted. He literally is not allowed to move, and it just makes him a lot more tankier and it feels pretty good. Overall, that is, I would argue, one of the best anomalies for this line. I also think, I think it's called 1,000 cuts, which, again, let me look it up for you right now. 1,000 cuts. Attacks deal 30 bonus true damage plus 15 true damage for each time the target was damaged by this effect. So that means Kog'maw, basically, with how ridiculous Kog'maw can auto, it just keeps proccing 1,000 cuts. So I think that one is also one of the best for this line. Again, it's just vertical watchers. It's very, very straightforward. It's just 4 watcher. Or actually, I apologize. This is actually incorrect. Usually, you are playing 4 watcher, 4 sniper. And actually, it's not Vander. It's actually Amumu here. And then you want 2 more snipers in the back line. Gonna be probably Twitch and ideally Caitlyn. So 4 sniper, 4 watcher. This is the main line that you're going to look for. Obviously, on level 7, you're not going to be able to hit this. You're actually going to be 4 watcher, 3 sniper. But then once you level, you're chilling. Until you get to that, excuse me, on level 7, until you get to your Scar 3, your Kog'maw 3, you want to play Firelight. So you do want to keep your eyes out for an Echo on your level 7 board, just to make sure that like your Scar can heal just a little bit extra. Which is super nice. And then on level 8, you can just drop it and it's totally chill. One last thing to note as well, I've noticed I have Zanya's Mana Zane and Wit's End. I don't think Zanya's is actually that good. I don't think Mana Zane is either, to be honest. I'm looking at these Kog'maw items here. I actually think it's probably going to be Wit's End or Gamblers are probably the 2 that you're going to look for. Gamblers is very, very good. It's like probably Kog'maw Biss because he gets to farm so much money and gets so much attack speed. And it really helps because, especially when it comes to 3-cost reroll, the reason why it's not a very popular line in general is because you need so much economy for it. It's really expensive to try to find a 2 3-star units that you absolutely need. So, or more specifically, sorry, 2 3-cost 3-star units. Very expensive. So that's usually why you won't see me play this line outside of Scuttle Puddle. Like, unless I get like a Gamblers Blade 2-1. Like, there's no way. Like, I need some way to generate economy in order to make sure that I get to hit everything. I think the biggest mistake I see a lot of, especially lower elo players, make when playing this line is that they play this in like economy starved portals, or like they think like they can play this without some way to get economy, or they go triple combat augments. You don't need triple combat augments. You need economy augments if you're playing this line. So just keep that in mind. Moving on. Standard. I love Standard. Standard is my favorite. We're playing around 4 costs. Now, when it comes to playing on 4 costs, the first one we should talk about is none other than 6 Sentinel Heimerdinger. Super straightforward line. Excuse me, I need water. I've been yapping this whole time. Super easy line to play. Probably the easiest, most straightforward ever. 6 Sentinels in the front, Heimer in the back. If the Academy item is good for Heimer, you put it on Heimer. If it's not, put it on somebody else. That's about it. Very simple, very straightforward. Your level 9 is just more Academy. Boom. That's it. So simple. Moving on. Next, okay, hold on. Your main tank is going to be Alawi. Alright, done. Moving on. That's about it. 4 Visionary Heimerdinger. This is the main line for Heimerdinger in my opinion. This is incorporating Black Rose, and Black Rose AP Flex in general was the strongest thing that you could play during the A patch, which is the reason why we got a B patch in the first place, but it's still very, very good. So This is easily the best line to play in it, in my opinion. You get to play the heimer, but also a malzahar on your board, which is super nice. And you have ways to incorporate a LeBlanc and as you like cap out your board, because you can put the LeBlanc here, you can drop the Swain, and then you can put in like some other stuff in here, maybe like a Jace. I think this is the most common way to like cap out your board when playing this line, but still a really, really great line. Just keep in mind that when you're playing this line, your main tank is still going to be Garen. It's not going to be Elise. It used to be Elise in the A patch and for like half of the B patch, and then now Elise is kind of like a one and done. When what I mean by that is she casts once, gets your AoE stun, and that's it. She's done her job, and then she just kind of depletes and dies. Garen items, just very generic tank items. You don't have to go too crazy. Again, Warmogs is bis on this guy, so HP in general is really, really nice. Something like that is probably perfectly fine. Obviously, just slam what you find. One last thing to note, actually two things to note. This line is very position heavy. You really, if you're going to play this line, you got to be locked in. Like, you really need to make sure that you're positioning your units properly. And what I mean by that is, one, Garen needs to be in between the Elise and the Scion, so you get a lot of that HP buff onto those specific units. That way, Elise is casting, and Scion gets more HP and soaks more damage because he'll be alive for so long because of the Black Rose vertical. But then, Elise should be opposite of your opponent's main carry. So, for example, if your opponent's playing Twitch and their Twitch is on the left side, Elise should be on the left side, because you should think of her as like J4 from like set 9. She jumps in and then AoE stuns everybody. So you really want to make sure that when she's actually casting and going in there and getting, you know, her feet dirty, everything that's important is getting stunned. If you are able to get to Elise 2 and maybe get like something like a Protector's Vow on her, she can cast once and then cast again, and then your opponent's carry basically doesn't have a carry. It's a very position heavy composition altogether. Another thing to note as well is LeBlanc. LeBlanc should be next or between your carries. And what I mean by that is that because of her ability, basically it just makes things more susceptible to damage. And because of that, that means your units like your heimer, which is your carry, your malzahar, who's probably going to be your secondary carry unless you high roll, and that's your primary carry. Your LeBlanc is going to do a lot of good sort of supportive damage, which is what you want when you... And if it's going to do that, you want to make sure she's targeting the same units that your carries are targeting. Malzahar is also, by the way, so good. Malzahar 1, I'm pretty sure, is actually a pretty good way to get to 9 if you have a lot of HP early stage 4. But that doesn't mean you stop rolling unless you're like super contested. Then like I guess maybe, but realistically no. Malzahar is like probably, in my opinion, the strongest 5-cost AP unit. So I would really make sure that you are picking this unit up as you're doing roll downs, trying to play around Black Rose Flex. Especially when you push to 9, you're probably gonna keep Black Rose in there to some degree, and flexing around whatever else. But Malzahar, again, super strong unit. Don't be afraid to itemize this unit whatsoever. LeBlanc, on the other hand, supportive unit. Don't really put items on LeBlanc. I guess it's fine. A 2-star LeBlanc is a 2-star LeBlanc, but she can never be your primary carry. I can say that for a fact. I've seen people try to play primary carry LeBlanc. It feels and looks terrible. Does not pass the eye test one bit. Moving on to the next composition as well. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? Is Twitch. Twitch is... he was the most underrated 4-cost at the very beginning of the patch, believe it or not. He was the unit that nobody wanted to play. And now we're starting to see that because Black Rose got nerfed, we're seeing that a lot of the AP carries got nerfed, and like the other ones don't shine as hard, like Zoe and Silco. Twitch really starts to get the shine. Twitch is very strong, does a lot of damage. You should not feel bad about having to play into this line. Ginsu slams early means you're definitely playing into Twitch, but you could also pivot into kog'maw if your spot somehow opens up for it. So it's a still very solid line. This is easily one of my favorite lines to play. I think it's super fun. It's just cool to see Twitch just like sniping things from far away. You just get the 3 experiment bonus. The traits look very beautiful on the left hand side here, as you can tell. I'm trying to figure out how you play this board on 8. That's been my only gripe with this board in particular, because you want to keep Watcher for Garen, you want to keep Nunu for experiments, you want to keep Elise for like the bruisers and like the form swapper, I guess. But realistically, you might even drop Elise. No, but then you want Black Rose, right? Like everything just fits so nicely. I've seen some players actually drop Zeri. They actually drop Sniper, which I think is really crazy in my opinion. But like this, it's interesting. I think that's definitely a take. Again, you flex around what you find, and then you go from there. It's very possible you can drop the Elise or you drop the Zeri. Maybe even drop Black Rose altogether. That's fine as well. I guess. I guess you have a lot of frontline. But then you lose Dominator for Mundo. I guess you'd have to drop the Morgana because it's like Black Rose and Visionary doesn't really matter too much here. But still, it's a bit tough. Anything you drop here feels a little bad. But still, very, very solid line. I would rank this one probably like close to S tier. I think Twitch is so good, and I don't think enough people respect the Twitch or respect the rat. Moving on to our +1s, the final category of compositions we should be talking about today. And these are compositions that if you have a +1 emblem, you should consider it. Going back to Twitch with our Bruiser Crown or Bruiser +1. Bruiser +1, 6 vertical Bruiser is super nice because Mundo uses the HP so efficiently. It is easily the best Bruiser crest holder. It is not even close. Everything he does basically scales off of his HP. So it's really nice to have that Bruiser crown because then he just gets a shitload of HP. If you remember Bruiser Annie, I believe it was from, or it might have been Brawler Annie, I don't remember the term, but it was from set 11. I think that was a thing. I don't quite remember. Triple Hull Crusher Annie set 11 was a thing. I don't remember if Bruiser Crest Annie was a thing, but maybe it was. I don't remember. But I remember she loved to use HP, so a lot of people were like, oh, maybe you can play in the vertical, whatever. I don't think we ever actually got to see that happen, now that I'm thinking about it. But Triple Hull Crusher was a thing, because people play Cult of Chaos or whatever, but you get the idea. Going back to this, though, you just play 6 vertical with Bruisers. Twitch is your backline carry. He just fits too well into the comp, and it just makes a lot of sense. This is a level 8 board. Very chill. Moving on to the next board as well is the +1 for Sork. Sork, I think, is underrated. I think this is something that not enough players are willingly thinking about. I think it's one of those lines that you can play because, one, even though some of the units, yes, Elise, Garen, are contested a lot, this Zoe unit is very easy to hit because outside of Rebel players, you don't really see Zoe too much. So, while Rebel is pretty popular as well, I still think the Sork crown line is super nice, especially because the Sork opener feels so good. Lux 2, Zyra 2, Vladimir, like all of these are very strong unit quality. 4 Sork is including a Swain, right? Like all of these are very high unit quality, so you never feel bad about taking a Sork crown early because it gives you so much tempo and you get to preserve so much HP. And the way to cap out this board is just 6 Sork, 5 Black Rose, right? Like it has a good enough and high enough cap that you can actually even win out lobbies with this setup. So I wouldn't sleep on this line at all. I think it's underrated. I don't think enough people are playing it, and not enough people are open-minded to playing around the Zoe unit. I think it's totally chill. Moving on. +1, I apologize because I don't have any of the augments in here, but +1 Enforcer is the next one I want to talk about. +1 Enforcer is fine. The only problem that I have with it is that when you go to level 8 and you want to play 8 Enforcer, you need to find the Caitlyn. And without the Caitlyn, you are never hitting 8 Enforcer. You actually really need to find it. So if you find it, great. You can definitely top 4 with this board. But it's a slight Caitlyn lottery on 8, which I'm not the hugest fan of. I don't think I've seen anybody play a very solid version of Enforcer Crown without finding a Caitlyn on 8. But maybe it's happened in the past. It's chill, but it's a bit dicey in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend this line necessarily, but I wouldn't shy away from it either. If you have a lot of strong enforcers, like Maddie 2 is one of the strongest one costs in the early game. Maddie 2 with like a Loris from like an orb drop and you get Enforcer Crown, I would take it. I think there's a spot that makes sense. And this is what's cool about it, is that I think with a lot of these +1s, the end version of it may not be as strong. It might have its own like strict conditions. But that doesn't mean that, like, if your early game is so good, if you take this, you shouldn't take it. You should still take it because it still makes a lot of sense from your spot. And that's when TFT is best, because you can take these augments that may not be the best performing on average, but if your spot is good for it, you're doing better than average. So there you go. Next one is Rebel. Okay, so Rebel doesn't actually need a crest, but usually you're gonna want the crest or the crown. The reason I say that is because it opens up +1, so the level 8 board fits so nicely. But also because if you get the +1, you don't have to search for that Jinx to hit 7. 7 is a critical mass point as well. I mean, I wouldn't call it critical mass, but it's important. It's an important break point. 7 gives you the stun, which is super, super strong. And this Jinx could actually just be a Vex on your level 8 board, so it's super easy to hit 7 once you get to level 8. Excuse me. Mbeza seems to be statistically the best carry when it comes to Rebel Crown holders. BTQSS is probably BIS. I don't think it's even close. Zoe is going to be your backline carry. This is the only time, really, anybody is really going to play Zoe. Zoe, by the way, itemization-wise, Shojin, Rabadon's +1, can be whatever you want. But again, very straightforward line. Allow is going to be your main tank, and you just work from there. Super, super straightforward. I will say this though, I think there's a rebel specific augment. It's called Paint the Town Blue, named after a very good song. Really, 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 really annoying to deal with. If you are playing against it, you'll know what I mean, because all you see is your opponent just, they keep throwing trash on the board, and it feels like you're playing cleanup duty, and there's just too much HP, and it can lose you a lot of fights that you think you should have won normally. If you don't know what it does, basically, when the first 5 rebels die each combat, they summon a copy of themselves that is a 1-star with 400 less HP, gain an akali and an Aurelia. I think this thing performs a little too well, in my opinion, so I wouldn't really lean towards Paint the Town Blue whenever possible. I think it's sort of a... It's tough. Like, sorry, wait, what did I just say? No, it's really good. You should take it every time if you're playing Rebels. What? Did I just say you shouldn't take it? You should take it. I'm like losing my train of thought. Sorry. Moving on. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover. No, I don't think so. All right, moving on. Dominator +1. Oh, this is spicy. Dominator +1 is a line I don't think enough people are playing into. Again, very underrated +1 line. I think it's super, super, super nice to play into. It's strong. It's strong. It has a super high cap. It requires quite a bit of flexible thinking, I think. Maybe that's just because I don't know the line well enough. But obviously, just play 6 Dominator, so that's pretty straightforward. But then you got to fill in the gaps, though. Malzahar seems to be the best holder, in my opinion, for obvious reasons. Best 5 cost AP. You might as well just throw a Dominator spot on it. But that just gives them more AP. But you have a bunch of different ways to play around it. You can flex a lot of different things. You can even do like Dominator Elise in the backline if you really need a backline carry. You could even do like with 2 Sork, you could do LeBlanc and Zoe with Dominator to get to the Malzahar. That works as well. Maybe Heimerdinger fits. You can fit in Visionary because you have a Nunu on the board. A lot of things are available to you. So I think this line is slept on. The one condition that I have for this line is that if you need a Ziggs. I think you need a Ziggs early game to really justify a Dominator crest from the early game, because Ziggs makes the opener good. This Ziggs unit, by the way, Ziggs 2 is super strong. One of the best 2 costs during the mid game that you can get as long as it's upgraded. So I would highly, highly recommend playing this line if you do get a Dominator crest early and try to play around some AP components. Moving on to Conqueror. Now, we're starting to get into the lines that were good and now they're not that good. Conqueror was a line that was good for a very long time, and then it got B patched, and then it got C patched, and now we're here. And that's the thing. I'm not even sure if it got B patched. I think it got slightly hit in the C patch. I don't even remember. But it's also possible that this line was strong early because it was very easy to play into, and people have just found better and stronger boards now, and now it's just sort of fallen off. That's probably the more likely reason why it's fallen off. I can't give you the exact reason. I don't remember, but I just know that this line doesn't perform very well. Mbeza is going to be your main carry, which is fine. Vi seems to be the generic Conqueror crest holder. Savika could do it as well if you find an early Savika. You just can't hit the Vi too. Totally understandable. Very straightforward line. It's a very high tempo line. So I wouldn't take this unless like I had like 4 Conqueror 2-1 and like a Draven 2 or something like that. Like you really need that tempo early. Kill a bunch of units so you can stack up those Conqueror stacks super duper fast. But still, it's a very fun line nonetheless. I do think it's a line that you really gotta high roll a little bit into it because the cap is not that high. So I think it's fun. I think it's fine. But would I like ever like, you need a really good reason to take this line, because again, it used to be like an A tier line, but now if you had to ask me, it's probably like middle of the pack B, maybe high B tier, maybe middle of the pack B tier. It's good when the spot is good for it, and that's about it. But still, very fun line. Very cool to see the stacks rise up, and it's cool to see the cash outs. But finally, 6 scrap. This line blows cock. I will be honest, this line, I didn't even want to include it in the video, but I felt like I kind of had to because people were playing it a lot. It was actually the most meta line during the A patch. And then the B patch, it got hit, and then people were like, oh, maybe it's just not that good. And now people are finding even stronger lines, so now it's really becoming like a C tier line in my opinion. I really don't think that this is a line that you should play very much anymore, and I really wanted to include it here as more of a warning, because maybe you heard people say it was good, but now not that great. But anyways, I think that's basically gonna do it. Again, this line though, like if you had a really strong like 4 scrap opener, okay, fine, maybe you should play it. But like, I don't know, man. Like this line doesn't seem very good to me, at least. But that's gonna do it for this meta-analysis for this video. Thank you so much for sticking all the way through if you found this useful. Some people did comment that I swear a lot and way too much, so I have tried to tone it down a little bit. Hopefully that has worked, and if not, next time I'll print a picture of a baby and I'll tape it to my monitor and I'll just pretend there's a child in the room. But until then, take it easy, take care. Hope you guys are having fun on ladder. Let me know if you find any interesting tech. I'd love to hear about it. But until then, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys all later. Take care, guys, and happy climbing.